In the heart of Amuaka village, where the red earth stretched endlessly like a woven cloth of dust and memory, life moved to the rhythm of drums, cockcrow, and gossip. Every path was a witness to the footsteps of ancestors, and every compound carried stories of joy and sorrow carved into its walls of mud. It was here that Obinna and Kimdalam built their lives, weaving love into each passing day like a tapestry that no hardship could easily tear apart. Their union had been one the villagers never stopped talking about, not because it was lavish or adorned with the riches of the world, but because it was built on an affection so pure that even the elders would smile when they saw them walking hand in hand to the village square. Obinna was a tall, broad-shouldered man, known for his tireless strength in the farm and his wisdom in the council of young men. And Kimdalam, his wife, was soft-spoken, her beauty glowing even in her simplicity. But what drew Obinna most to her was the gentleness of her heart and the faith that seemed to pour from her like a stream that never ran dry. From the very first day they tied the knot under the blessings of kinsmen and the watching eyes of ancestors. Their dreams had been clear, to raise children who would bear their name, till the lands after them, and protect their heritage. But as the moon chased the sun through the seasons, one year melted into another, and their compound remained silent. The cradle they carved out of raffia untouched, and the lullabies in Kimdalam hummed to herself unanswered. In the Igbo land, a home without the cry of a child was like a market without traders, strangely empty, provoking whispers that carried heavier than the harmattan wind. And indeed, whispers rose against them. Women in the village would murmur behind their wrappers when Kimdalam passed. Iya, beautiful like this, yet nothing to show? What is a woman without a child? She should pray harder. Obinna is wasting his youth. It wasn't long before some men began nudging Obinna with half-mocking advice. My friend, do you want to grow old without a son to inherit your cutlass? Maybe your chi tied your wife's womb. But Obinna, unlike many, stood firm. His love for Kimdalam was not the kind to be swayed by gossip. He would smile, sometimes laugh, and answer, children come from God. When he says the time is right, we will rejoice. And though his voice carried courage, his nights were often heavy. Beside Nkemdalam, as they lay on their raffia mat, he would hold her hand and whisper, Nkem, my own, wipe your tears. We will not remain like this forever. Our God is watching. Nkemdalam, for her part, clung to that faith, but her heart bled silently. Each festival season, as other women dressed their children in new clothes and oiled their hair for dances, she would sit alone, forcing a smile as she watched the masquerades. She prayed harder than anyone in the village shrine, cried louder in the midnight hour, and made vows to God under the moonlight, promising that if he blessed her with a child, she would dedicate that child to him. Then, like a light piercing a dark cave, the miracle happened. One cool morning, after weeks of unusual weakness, Kimdalam knelt by the firewood hearth and felt a sharp pull in her body. Days passed, and her body grew strange. The village women whispered again, but this time their whispers carried suspicion and awe. Finally, the elder midwife of the village confirmed it, and Kimdalam had taken in. The news spread like dry harmattan fire. Obinna's wife is with child. Chinik Aquila. After all these years, finally, drums of joy echoed in Obinna's heart. He danced with the palm wine tapper, poured libations to God, and lifted his wife's hands high before their kinsmen. This child, he declared, will be the one to fight for us, to carry my name, and to silence every mouth that mocked us. The village rejoiced, yet beneath the joy, envy still brewed. Some smirked and muttered, let her give birth first. What if it is a girl? What use is a girl to a man's lineage? Obinna ignored them. He threw himself even deeper into work. Each day, before the sun rose over the hills, he was in the farm clearing bushes, planting yams, climbing palm trees to tap wine, and trading in the markets of neighboring villages. His laughter became louder, his hands stronger. Everything he did was for the child that was to come. But fate, as the elders say, has a way of mixing sweetness with bitterness in the same calabash. One evening, as the sky turned orange with the setting sun, Obinna did not return from the market road. Word spread quickly. A lorry, reckless and heavy with goods, had overturned on the narrow path. Obinna had been caught beneath its weight. By the time the villagers reached him, His breath was already gone. The wail that rose from Kimdalam's hut that night shook the hearts of even the coldest women. She tore her wrapper, rolled on the earth, and screamed his name into the night until her voice broke. The child in her womb pressed heavily against her ribs as if to remind her that she was not entirely alone. But in that moment, she felt abandoned by heaven and earth alike. The morning after, while she still sat in ashes, women came again, not to comfort her, but to taunt. Kimdalam, sorry, but pray it is a boy. At least then he can inherit something. If it is a girl, your suffering has just begun. You know our people, land does not pass to a woman. Their laughter stung sharper than the wound of widowhood. But Kimdalam, clutching her belly, raised her face to the sky and prayed. Chukwu, give me a son. Let him be my warrior, my defender, my voice in this wicked world. Night after night, her prayers poured out, soaked in tears. She would whisper into her womb, my child, you must be a boy. You must fight for me. Do not let them laugh at us. Do not let your father's name be buried. Her heart held tightly to hope, but the winds of destiny had their own path. The moons waxed and waned, and the days of Kimdalam's pregnancy dragged on like a long road with no end. Each morning she rose, swollen with both child and grief, her eyes puffy from the tears she shed for Obinna. The man who had promised to stand with her through storms was now lying beneath the earth, his grave marked by a mound of clay and the faint smoke of burnt palm fronds from his funeral rites. Yet life inside her womb stirred daily, reminding her that death had not swallowed everything. Her condition was not without scrutiny. In Omuaka village, a widow with a rounded belly became a public spectacle. The women at the stream no longer whispered behind their hands. They said things boldly. Let her hurry up and deliver. We want to know if she has any hope at all. If it is a boy, she will at least have a defender. But if it is a girl, Chukwu Equina, then her suffering has only begun. Their words followed her like a shadow. Sometimes she would fetch water with her clay pot balanced neatly on her head, but her eyes brimmed with tears until the water in the pot seemed to echo her grief. At night, she knelt by her raffia mat, hands spread wide toward heaven. O God of my ancestors, do not put me to shame. Let me bear a son. Let him rise and speak where my voice is silenced. Let him fight for the land his father left behind. Let my enemies bow their heads in shame. Even her late husband's kinsmen were waiting like vultures. Obinna's elder brother, Okali, began visiting the compound with sly comments. He would lean on his staff and say, Nkim, our eyes are on you. If you give us a son, we will protect his inheritance. But if it is a daughter, he would pause and laugh in that dry, mocking way. You know what our tradition says. Land does not pass to women. Those words struck her like blows. She carried them with her as heavily as she carried her unborn child. The day of birth came with the violence of a thunderstorm. Rain clouds gathered early that morning, rolling over the hills like an army. Kimdalam's cries pierced the compound as the midwife, Mama Yugo, hurried inside with herbs and warm water. Sweat poured down her face, mixing with tears, as she gripped the wooden pillar of the hut and groaned. Outside, children gathered to peep through cracks, while women sat gossiping under the mango tree, waiting for the outcome. May it be a boy, one muttered. Let us see if her prayers will be answered, another replied. Hours dragged by. Each contraction tore through Kimdalam's body like fire, each push sending her mind to the heavens. Chanique, give me a son, she screamed. At last, a cry split the air, the sharp, fragile cry of new life. The midwife raised the baby high, her hands trembling with the weight of fate. The women outside strained their ears. Is it a boy? Tell us, Mama Yugo, what did she deliver? The midwife's voice dropped like a stone into water. It is a girl. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, cruel and cutting. Ahaya, all her prayers wasted. Obinna's name has ended here. Inside, Kimdalam felt her heart shatter. She reached for the child, her face wet with tears. A girl, she whispered in disbelief. Chukwu, have you abandoned me? She pressed the tiny bundle to her chest, but her grief was so deep that even her embrace felt weak. We are finished. Who will fight for us now? Who will protect our land? Who will silence the mouths of those who mock us? The baby's small fists moved gently, as though protesting her mother's despair. But outside, the damage was done. Within weeks, Obina's brothers descended like ants on spilled honey. They took the yam barn, stripped the goats from the pen, and divided the farmland among themselves. When Kimdalam protested, they laughed. "Do not waste your voice, woman. You have no son. Everything belongs to us." Her hut remained, her child remained, and her grief remained. All else was gone. Life after that was a crucible of hardship. And Kimdalam, with no husband to shield her and no property to lean on, turned herself into a beast of burden. She farmed small ridges that other widows left behind, sold roasted maize by the roadside, and carried heavy loads at the village market to earn coins. Day by day, she poured her soul into survival. The child, whom she named Adora, meaning the daughter of all, grew in the midst of poverty but knew nothing of pity. From the moment she could crawl, she was reaching for sticks, dragging them across the compound, and beating the earth like a drummer. As she grew, her body carried a strange strength that startled even her mother. By the age of 10, she was carrying loads that grown women hesitated to lift. By 13, she was climbing palm trees with agility. Villagers whispered again, this time in awe. "Look at that girl, Adora. She works like 3 men put together. She takes after no one we know. Perhaps Obina's spirit lives in her." But for Nkimdalam, every day was still a struggle between pride and fear. She had loved her daughter dearly, but the question haunted her. Can a girl truly fight for us in a land where women's voices are silenced? Night after night, she held Adora close, whispering into her ears, "My child, forgive me for my tears. They said you are not enough, but to me, you are everything. Grow strong, Adora. Grow strong enough to silence them." By the time Adora turned 25, the child once mocked had become a storm in the village, full of strength, boldness, and beauty. Men lowered their voices when she passed. Women admired her, but feared her tongue. The girl who was born amid laughter and scorn was now shaping into a woman whose name carried weight. And so began the tale of how a daughter, not a son, would rise to fight for her mother, to reclaim all that was lost, and to remind a village that strength is not bound by gender. The sun rose daily over Omuaka village with the same unbending rhythm, but in Kimdalam's compound, something different was happening. While other children her age chased grasshoppers through the tall weeds or sat at their mothers' sides plating their dolls with corn husks, Adora seemed drawn to heavier tasks. Her play was not with toys, but with machetes too long for her hands, mortars too heavy for her size, and palm fronds that scratched her skin as she tried to climb trees meant only for men. It began when she was barely 7 years old. That year, Nkimdalam fell ill after days of overworking herself in the farm. Food was scarce, and the mother, fearing her child would starve, had worked under the scorching sun until her body gave up. She lay on the mat, too weak to move. Adora, looking at her mother's frail form, tied a small wrapper across her waist, grabbed her father's cutlass that still hung rusting by the doorway, and trudged to the farm. The farm ridges were taller than her, the hoe too heavy for her small arms, but Adora swung it again and again, her breath ragged, her arms trembling, until beads of sweat soaked her face. By evening, she had cleared a small patch of land. She returned home carrying firewood tied in a bundle almost her size. The villagers who saw her stopped and gawked. Is that not Obina's daughter? At her age? Carrying firewood like that? She is not an ordinary child. The spirit of her father must be working in her. That day marked the beginning. Adora did not stop. She began rising with the cock's crow, pounding fufu, splitting firewood, climbing palm trees to fetch fruit, and even wrestling down stubborn goats that broke into their compound. The strength that flowed in her body was unexplainable. By the time she was 12, she had already earned a name in the village. Some called her Ada Manwu, the daughter of the masquerade, because she moved with the boldness of a spirit. Others called her Nwa Au, the child of a lion, for she had no fear of anyone. Her strength often led to confrontations. One day, at the village stream, a group of older boys mocked her as she bent to fetch water. "Look at you, Adora," one sneered. "You work like a man, but you are still just a girl. No matter how strong you are, you will still marry and cook in a man's kitchen." Adaora's eyes flashed like burning coal. Without a word, she lifted the clay pot, filled to the brim with water, and balanced it on her head with one hand. Then she bent, scooped another smaller pot, and held it under her arm. With her free hand, she carried her mother's basket of firewood. She walked past them without spilling a drop. The boys gaped, their laughter silenced. Tufiakwa, this one is not normal. From that day, the mockery lessened, replaced by a wary respect. Kimdalam, meanwhile, watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and fear. Many nights, she lay awake whispering to God, Chukwu, you gave me a daughter when I begged for a son. Yet this child, she carries a strength I cannot explain. Do not let her strength bring her harm. Guide her steps. But Adora was not afraid of harm. In fact, she seemed drawn to challenges. During wrestling matches at the village square, while other girls clapped and cheered for their brothers, Adora would slip into the circle and wrestle boys bigger than her. She did not always win, but her courage shocked the spectators. Some elders shook their heads, muttering about abominations, but others nodded in secret admiration. She is not behaving like a woman, one elder complained. But she has the heart of a warrior, another replied. Perhaps our land has never seen a woman like this before. As she grew older, her beauty bloomed alongside her strength. By 18, Adora had skin the color of polished bronze, eyes that shone with both fire and gentleness, and a body strong enough to split palm kernels with bare hands. Men noticed her, but most were too intimidated to speak. When suitors came timidly to Kimdalam, Adora would chase them away with bold words. I am not here to be anyone's slave. If you cannot farm with me, climb palm trees with me, or fight beside me, go and find another. This only deepened the mystery around her. Mothers whispered to their sons, stay away from Adora. She will turn you into a servant. Yet, secretly, many admired her. Her turning point came one planting season. In Kimdalam's small portion of farmland had been seized by Okali, Obina's elder brother, the same uncle who had mocked them years ago. He claimed the land now belonged to him since Obina had left no son. When Adora, now a strong young woman, discovered what had happened, she stormed to the farm. Uncle, remove your footprints from my father's land, she shouted, her voice echoing through the ridges. Okali laughed. You, a woman? What will you do? This land belongs to me now. Go and pound fufu. Without another word, Adora seized his hoe, snapped its wooden handle across her knee, and flung the pieces at his feet. The next time you step on this land, I will break more than your hoe. You will meet the spirit of my father through my hands. The villagers who heard the quarrel ran to the scene, expecting to see Okali chase her away. Instead, they saw him retreat, his face dark with shame. From that day, people began to whisper differently. This girl is not just strong. She has the spirit of a man. She is the defender her mother prayed for. By the time Adora turned 25, her reputation was sealed. She was no longer just Obina's daughter or Nkimdalam's only child. She was a name that carried weight. People feared to cross her, not because she used charms or witchcraft, but because her courage was sharper than a cutlass. She stood tall in the village square, not behind men, but among them, daring anyone to treat her or her mother as lesser beings. What her mother once saw as a curse, a daughter instead of a son, was slowly becoming their greatest blessing. But Adora was not finished. Her strength was not only for cutting palm fruits or wrestling with men. Soon, she would rise against the very people who robbed them years ago. And this time, she would not just speak, she would fight. The dry season had settled upon Amuaka village, cracking the red earth and bending the trees into brittle shapes. Dust clung to every surface, and the harmattan wind carried voices more sharply than usual. In this season, quarrels ripened quickly, and news traveled faster than palm wine poured at a gathering. It was during this time that Adora made her boldest move. For years, she and her mother had lived in the shadow of loss. Land stolen, goats carried off, barns emptied. Though Adora had grown into a woman of formidable strength, her uncles still claimed ownership of Obina's farmland. Whenever she farmed on the little borrowed ridges near the forest, she could feel her blood boil, knowing her father's fertile land lay in the hands of greedy men. But Adora was no longer a girl. She had spent years watching her mother's tears. She had spent nights listening to her name dragged through the mud. Enough was enough. One morning, before the cock crowed, she tied a red cloth around her waist, a symbol of defiance, and slung a machete across her shoulder. Kimdalam, startled from her sleep, sat up. Adora, Where are you going with that face of war? Adora turned to her mother, her voice steady and deep. Mama, today I reclaim what is ours. Today our shame ends. Kimdalim's heart raced. Fear tightened her chest. My daughter, do not do what will bring the wrath of your father's people upon us. You are only a woman. Adora knelt, grasped her mother's trembling hands, and kissed them. Mama, I am not only a woman. I am your child. Did you not pray for a son to fight for you? God gave you me instead. Do not fear. Today, I will show them that a daughter can fight like 10 sons. Before Nkimdalim could protest further, Adora strode into the dawn. When she reached the farmland, the sun was only a pale smear in the east. But her uncles were already there, hoeing and clearing. They looked up, startled by the sound of her footsteps pounding the earth. Who do we see? Oakley, the eldest, sneered. The lioness has come to roar. Adora, go back home. This is not a woman's ground. But Adora did not stop. She planted herself firmly in the middle of the ridges, lifted her machete, and slammed it into the soil. This land is my father's. It is mine. If you step here again after today, I swear by the gods of this land, I will fight you till your blood mixes with this soil. The younger uncles laughed nervously, expecting Oakley to chase her away. But the look in Adora's eyes froze him. He stepped forward. If you were a man, I would beat you like a goat. But you are a woman. I will not stain my hands. Adora's voice cracked like thunder. Then let this woman show you how strong a goat can be. Before anyone could blink, she wrestled the hoe from his hands, flung it aside, and pushed him hard. Oakley staggered and fell flat into the ridges, his pride scattering like yam tendrils. The younger men gasped, their mouths open. By now, villagers had gathered at the edge of the farm, drawn by the commotion. Old men leaned on their sticks, women wrapped their arms over their chests, children shouted in excitement. All eyes were on Adora. Oakley scrambled to his feet, his wrapper smeared with dust. Fury contorted his face, but he dared not attack her again. Adora raised her machete and pointed it at all of them. Listen well, all of you. From today, nobody touches this land. Nobody. If you try it, you will meet me here. And I promise you, I will not stop at breaking hoes. I will break bones. A murmur spread through the crowd. Never before had a woman stood in the village square, let alone a farm, and declared such defiance. Some shook their heads in disbelief, but others nodded with admiration. The name of Adora began to shift, no longer just the girl of unusual strength, but the defender of her bloodline. That evening, a meeting was called by the elders. The matter was too big to ignore. Adora appeared at the gathering with her mother beside her. She stood tall among the circle of men, unshaken by their stares. One elder cleared his throat. Adora, what you have done is not the way of our people. Women do not claim land. But another elder, old enough to remember Obina's generosity, raised his hand. Yet who are we to deny her? Did her father not sweat on that soil? Did he not plant yam after yam? Should his bloodline vanish simply because his child is female? Is the strength we see in Adora not proof that the spirits themselves have chosen her? The council buzzed with argument, some for tradition, others for justice. At last, the oldest elder spoke, his voice calm like the flowing stream. What is tradition if it kills justice? Let the land remain with Adora. Let her mother farm in peace. If any man here believes he can take it from her, let him face her in the square tomorrow. And we shall see who the gods favor. No man stood, not one. From that day, the land was hers. And with it, respect returned to Nkimdalim's household. Adora's fame spread beyond Amuaka. Stories of the fearless woman who reclaimed her father's land reached neighboring villages. Some said she had the strength of 3 men. Others claimed her father's spirit lived in her body. Whatever the tale, one thing was certain. Adora was no longer a figure of mockery. She was a force. It was not long before the news reached the ears of a wealthy young man from the city, Chike, who had come home for a festival. When he saw Adora, carrying palm fruits on her head, while still standing proud like a queen, his heart stirred. Who was that woman? He asked. They told him her story, and his admiration deepened. Unlike other suitors, he was not afraid of her strength. He was drawn to it. He approached her, and though Adora tested his courage with sharp words, he did not retreat. In time, love bloomed. When Chike sought her hand, he did not ask her to abandon her strength. Instead, he honored it. Their marriage was celebrated not only in Amoka, but in the city, where he took her and her mother. Even in their absence, the villagers did not dare touch their land again. The memory of Adaora's machete and the fire in her eyes lingered like a warning. Years later, as Nkemdalim sat in the city with her daughter and son-in-law, peace finally settled in her heart. She looked at Adora, her once wept-over daughter, now a woman respected far and wide, and whispered to herself, "Chukwu, you answered my prayers in a way I did not understand. I asked for a son to fight for me. You gave me a daughter, and she has fought more than any son ever could." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not of sorrow. They were tears of fulfillment, of gratitude. And in Omoaka village, the story of Nkemdalim and her daughter lived on, told by firelight to children. Do not say a daughter has no value. Do not say a woman cannot fight. For once, in this land, a daughter rose and became the lion her mother prayed for. It ends with Adora reclaiming her father's land, transforming village traditions, finding love on her own terms, and fulfilling her mother's prayer in an unexpected way.